Hello, welcome to another episode of the Breaking the Silence with Arthur, Nikki, Nicole, where you can unleash your inner voice. Breaking the Silence is a platform where entrepreneurs can advertise their business, artists and poets can showcase their talents, and authors can advertise their books. Every appearance, I will put someone in the BTS spotlight to advertise their business, product, service, or talent. I will not hold you any longer. Today's guest is Miss Bridgitte B. Green. She is a therapist out of California that works to help couples and change their lives. Everyone, please welcome Miss Bridgitte Green to the stage. Hello, how
Hello,
are
hello.
you?
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Breaking the Silence.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your journey as a therapist.
Well, being a therapist was something I always wanted to do, but I took other avenues instead of doing what I always wanted to do. I was a probation officer for 20 some odd years, and then I became a teacher. And then I finally said, listen, you know what you want to do, so just do it. And so that's what pushed me into therapy. And then once I started working with couples, I realized that's what I really love. And I really love working with neurodiverse couples. So those two are really my specialties.
Awesome. So it's when you say neurodivergent, what is explain that? What is neurodivergent and new what you say neurotypical brains and how does that affect relationships?
It has a huge effect on relationships. It has a huge effect on how somebody walks through life. A neurodivergent brain, the person is usually dealing with ADHD, high functioning autism, uh, what else? Anything that falls under ADHD, uh, highly high functioning autism, anything that falls under there. Your brain works different. And so what
Hmm.
happens is you hear things and you see things, you understand things differently than the neurotypical brain. So oftentimes people who are neurodivergent, people compare them to people who don't have empathy. They do have empathy. That's a skill. Everything we do is a skill. Every single thing we do. And that is just a skill that they have had trouble learning. And so we need to work with that. A neurodivergent brain sees emotions different than we do, or perhaps not at all. So I always give the example of the wife who was sitting on the couch crying and the husband came in and said, "Where's the dog food?" And he found the dog food, he fed the dog. I was seeing them in a couple of hours. When they came on, she was furious. And she said he showed no emotion. He did nothing for me to cry. But his neurodivergent brain told him, this is the time she feeds the dogs. She's upset. I don't want her to have to worry about that task. I'm going to do that task for her.
Hmm.
That's how it felt. But for most of us who are neurotypical, we would have felt the same way. You worried about the dogs?
Mhm.
You should be worried about me. And
Exactly.
that's just how neurodivergent brains work. And so there's often difficulty in meeting each other's emotions. So it could be, you might have dyslexia or Tourette syndrome. There's just a whole umbrella that it falls under. And it just makes communicating different. And as those people who are neurodivergent in the world and work and do all that, their partner will often say, I get the worst of this person. The world gets the best. And that's very true because they've
Mhm.
learned how to mask. They've learned how to walk in the world so that it appears nothing is wrong with them, because they feel something is wrong with them and they're just different. I always tell them, you're just different. You're not damaged. You're just different. But when they come home, the mask comes off. They're emotionally exhausted and the
Hmm.
mask comes off. And so your partner is getting the exhausted you every day. So we
Mhm.
work on skills. I know you're exhausted, but let's still connect with your partner.
Right. So is it more challenging to deal with those type of couples than like normal therapy with people that don't have those type of issues?
In the beginning, I thought it was, and I do not think it is, because if both partners are willing to work, then you have two people who are saying, this is our problem. I don't want to lose my husband. I don't want to lose my wife. What do we do so we can stay together? And so you have these two people wanting to do that. Now, when you're walking into that, that's great. I have had a couple where one was neurodivergent and refused to accept it. I'm not neurodivergent. I don't want to be tested. I don't want anything. My partner's crazy for mentioning it. And my theory is with adults, children need to be tested. Don't get me wrong. But with adults, with a 45-year-old adult telling me that, I said, that's fine. Let's just work on the signs and symptoms that are hurting your marriage. So that's the route I take when I have someone who's like, really, I'm not neurodivergent. I'm not going to work with someone who will treat me in what their mind is different.
Well, so you have to be tested in order to know that you are neuro. So what's the process with that?
That's just finding a therapist who does testing, and they'll conduct a few tests. I don't test, and then they will tell you what's going on. And
Hmm.
so for some people, they'll say, I don't want that label. I don't believe in it, so I'm not going to pay for it. Whatever, that's okay. As an adult, that's okay. But as a child, if you think your child has signs and symptoms, they need to be tested because their struggle in school is
Mhm.
on another level.
Exactly. I agree. I agree completely. So what is a memorable moment that you had in your career that you think you changed, maybe changed someone's life?
Um, I guess the most memorable is a couple who was engaged and unsure if they would even get married. She was like, "I'm out. I'm out of here. He just does things to drive me crazy." Well, they got married a few months ago, and she one day we came on and she said, I finally realized he is not doing this to drive me crazy. There is some
Mm.
understanding he does not have, and he's really working on being better, understand and understanding me. How can you not love somebody who's willing to do that? And so I saw the progress in them that they took on the the homework I give. They actually did it. They would come in and say, we started to have an argument, we separated for a little bit, we came back, then we could talk about it. And so they actually did it. And so yeah, they're married now.
Wow, wow.
They
That's
come in
awesome.
every now and again for a little checkup, like where what do we and but that's it.
I know you said that you were wanting to be in this field earlier, and you was in the probationary area. So what influenced you to? What was the? You know what? It's time. It's time for me to change this career. It's time for me to do what I have to do. Moment.
I realized that as a probation officer, I was always juvenile. I preferred talking to the kids and talking to the families much more than going out and arresting somebody.
Mhm.
That was not something I enjoyed. I did not enjoy having this effect on somebody's life where, oh yeah, we need to lock them up. I didn't enjoy that. And so I worked in a position for a long time where I had very little. I didn't have to really say, no, they don't deserve this. No, and it was okay. When I changed my positions, I was like, I can't do this. And so I
Mhm.
decided just to go back to school.
Well, oftentimes we do get stuck in careers and we're just doing it because, okay, we have to survive. We have to make this money for the bills. And then our passion, we just kind of like push to the side and say, I can always do that. But not all the time you can do that. You have to do it right in the moment. 20 years, you could have been doing what you love to do.
I could have been doing what I love to do. And let me say, we get stuck. And so my
Mhm.
thing was in LA County, after 25 years, you have lifetime medical. So when I realized that's all I want, I just want my lifetime medical. I can go back to school. And by the time I finish school, I'll have my lifetime medical. So
Right.
forget the rest.
I know that's right. So do you think a person's childhood has more effect on their mental health than their adulthood?
Their childhood definitely has a huge effect. We learn what we see as children. So when you see chaos, you get used to living in chaos.
Mhm.
When you see domestic violence, when people are cruel to you as a children, when people touch you inappropriately, that has a lifetime effect,
Mhm.
especially if we don't get it taken care of. I
Absolutely.
teach some classes to women in the county jail. And when we begin to talk about their childhood and the molestation and the child abuse, I mean, it's as you would expect it because those women are there because they're hurting. they've experienced things, they don't really know how to live life in a certain way because they are so hurt, they can't even get on the road to living life in that way.
Mm.
And so your childhood has a huge effect. I tell parents, be careful what you say and what you do to your children. They're going to take that with them forever. Offer your children mental health assistance. Say to them, would you like to talk to a therapist? And especially in our culture, we don't do that. You're supposed to take it to the Lord and leave it there. But what
Yeah.
happens when you don't even know what to take to the Lord? What happens when your
Exactly.
mind is so confused you don't know what to do that? So I tell people, make sure your child is in therapy. If that is, offer it. So hopefully they will want to do it, and make it norm. Make it a norm. So I go to therapy, and my daughter is 16. She sees a therapist. When she's fine, she'll say, "Oh, mom, I'm going to tell her I don't need to see her right now." Okay. And then she'll go back maybe a year later. "Oh, mom, some things are going on. Can you sign me up again?" Sure. So it's very normal in our household that you need people you can talk to that are totally professional. So they're not looking at your personality, how you will feel if I say this. They're giving you what you
Mhm.
need. So a childhood being, most of the women in jail have been molested. Being molested by someone who's supposed to be your protector, someone who's supposed to love you no matter what, that is life changing.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
life changing. And it goes
Absolutely.
with addiction. And then what does addiction lead to? It leads to, how do I get this money to feed this addiction? And I
Mhm.
can't hang out with my cousin who's the bank manager because she doesn't have this addiction. I have to hang out with my cousin who's addicted. And
Exactly.
so they wind up in jail.
It's sad though, but you're absolutely right. As a culture, we don't think we need therapists, and it's like that moment where you say, "Take it to the Lord." But
Hmm.
and for a while, being the fact that I was raised that way, I didn't think it was necessary to go outside of and talk to somebody in a safe place and tell everything. But it's necessary for you to be able to unleash some of those things that are on your heart and your mind because you do take it into your childhood. Everything that I mean, your adulthood, everything that happens in your childhood, you take it forevermore. And if you don't talk to someone, then you're going to be suffering for a lifetime.
And I tell people we don't want to be stuck in survival mode. So when you're raised in a home where there's always chaos, things are always going wrong, you begin to live in survival mode. And that becomes so um, normal for you that you then become an adult who's in survival mode. That
Mhm.
affects how we manage money. It affects our relationships. It affects all of that. Because if we are living in survival mode, how do we then have a good relationship? Because we need this all the time. And so I tell
Mhm.
people, think about what are you trying to survive? Let's try to just live.
Exactly. It does make life harder when you're carrying all of this baggage and all of this hurt and pain that you just don't release.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, in our culture, we don't do that.
No.
We're gonna pray, we're gonna take it to the Lord, take it to our depth, and we're not gonna release it. And that's most of the time, like you said, it affects other people's relationship, the relationship you have with other people. It affects your work environments. It affects any environment that you go in because now you're holding all of this pain instead of letting it go.
Yes, so that's so important. And I want to say this for parents who have, Uncle Joe, who is the family molester in your home, to then take your kid to a barbecue where Uncle Joe is there
Mhm.
and say, stay away from Uncle Joe. Why would you put that responsibility on your kid? Uncle Joe shouldn't be there. And if he
Mhm.
is there, then you shouldn't be taking your child because when he
Absolutely.
molested the first niece, he should have gone to jail. And so I encourage families, don't protect him, protect the child. Your child is 7. You're telling them to stay away from Uncle Joe. If Uncle Joe has a good piece of cake, your kid is going to sit down beside them and want to share the cake. That's what you do with relatives who love you. So if you're
Exactly.
going to put that responsibility on your child, don't do that.
But see, that's how the damaging and keeps going on and on and on because now Uncle Joe is being protected. Now Uncle Joe is not only messing with this niece, they're messing with the next niece and the next niece. And then it finally comes out when you're grown
Hmm.
that Uncle Joe was the one that had been molesting you all your life.
Hmm.
But that's what families do. They protect that person instead of, like you said, send them to jail.
Hmm. Don't put the responsibility of your child to stay away from Uncle Joe. Make sure Uncle Joe is staying away from everybody.
Everybody. Because
Everybody.
if he doesn't do it to your family, and more than likely he's doing it to somebody else outside the family as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 'cause that's the way of life, I guess. But we have to change it. We have to be the person to change things.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have some type of hotline that people can contact you in the middle of like a crisis or anything outside of your
Well,
job?
I have I always give my email, and you can always email me if you're feeling, if your crisis is you're suicidal, you're some, don't email me, call 911. But if your life is in flux at this moment and you feel like, oh, I need to talk to someone, you can contact me at Bridgitte Green Therapy. My name is spelled just like it is here, Bridgitte Green Therapy at gmail.com.
Let me run that for you. Bridget Green
Therapy
Therapy.
at gmail.com.
Okay. .com.
And we can discuss there, what it is that you need and how I can assist.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you so much, Miss Bridget, for tuning in with me and being a guest on my podcast. I've learned so much just with the short conversation that I've had with you. Because to be honest, I didn't know what neurodivergent couples were when
Mm-hmm.
you put. I was like, what? She worked with those type of couples. What type of couples are they? But that was very, very interesting. I learned something new today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Once again, I would like to thank you so much for being a part of the Breaking the Silence podcast, where you can unleash your inner voice. Thank you, everyone that's out there that's tuning in to another episode of Breaking the Silence with Miss Bridget Green. Please like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Breaking the Silence for updates, new episodes, snippets, and more. Tune in tonight for the next interview at 8 p.m. with Miss Ohima Divine. She is a master life coach and a very good friend of mine. Remember to make every day a masterpiece. Tune in the next time to break the silence together.